Hi there, it's Michelle Kosinski. We're just about to launch our podcast called One Decision, where we delve into what goes into making some of the decisions that impact our world. We found some fascinating stories out there, people who've been very honest about what they were up against, the self-doubt, the fear, what it was really like in those rooms, away from what we all saw publicly. So today, as we watch 20 years of U.S. involvement in Afghanistan come to this screeching, stunning halt, I thought you might like to hear what our co-host, the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, thinks about these decisions unfolding before our eyes. He just got back from a day of fishing in England, which is his passion, outside of spycraft, so he was feeling relaxed and thoughtful. Have you been watching the world burn like the rest of us?
Yes, I'm shocked, upset, concerned, talking to former colleagues. Yeah, it's been a very difficult period of time. I mean, it's because it's something that I was closely connected with right back at the beginning of the I wouldn't say invasion of Afghanistan, entry into Afghanistan. So, yeah, it's been a difficult several days.
God, yes, you've seen it all.
Yeah, and I went to Bagram with Tony Blair. I met Karzai many times. For a period of time, I was heavily involved. So, I feel I have equities, or past equities. And I totally disagree with the way that Biden has handled this.
Yeah, it is. I guess if ever anything was a shit show, it would be this right now. It's painful.
It's painful. It's painful. It's really awful. And of course, it's not about the invasion of Afghanistan. It's about the occupation of strategic space. And that means you have to have the determination to stay there. And the West has to show that we have staying power. And we've shown that we do not have staying power. And that's the very worst outcome of this. And, military casualties were down to a very low level. And we could easily have held on for longer. We could have planned our exit very carefully over a long period of time. I mean, it's awful.
I have to agree.
Yeah, I'm very, very upset about the whole thing. But the only light in this particular tunnel, is that Massoud's son and Massoud's brother have stood up and said, no Taliban in the Panjshir.
He's talking about the anti-Taliban, the resistance fighters that are currently organizing, potentially for battle, in the beautiful, pristine Panjshir Valley in the north of Afghanistan, deep in the Hindu Kush mountains.
در دوره‌های قبلی حاکمیت طالبان اونا را یک پوزشانه در شمالی پروان کاپیسا کدامن به خاک مالیدیم به طرف آمیایشان رفتن و این دفعه با عموت نیرو و قوت در برابرشان استاد هستیم امو پوزشانه به خاک مالیده روسیا به طرف آمیایشان خاط روانشان کردیم.
It's amazing, but how much potential do you think that force has?
They have significant potential if they have the right backers. And there are a lot of private initiatives that I've been aware of in the last 48 hours or longer. And I think that there may be the seed of something which is different from the Taliban in Afghanistan. And I think it will depend on how much momentum it gathers over time. And actually, maybe it depends on the women of Afghanistan. Mm. And it would be very exciting if there is a sort of massive popular reaction which drives the menfolk. Because it's, initially it's the women who are going to suffer most.
That would be something to think of them now driving the future. And by the way, did you disagree with Donald Trump making this deal with the Taliban to pull out U.S. troops?
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand very clearly the American wish to detach themselves from Afghanistan. The trouble is that the Trump agreement, which in a way Biden should have dumped, provided the platform for Biden to take the wrong decision. But I think to sort of blame Trump totally is not the right way to go, because Biden didn't have to do what he did in the way that he's done it. I mean, I think Trump perhaps had the right idea, but the question is, if you applied the Trump agreement, it's what happened afterwards. I mean, for example, you could easily have hung on to Bagram. You could easily have provided air power. And with the right backing of air power, the Afghan military could have survived and could have held the main strategic bits of Afghanistan, not the countryside. But these are complex issues.
Absolutely. But you have the perspective on all this that very few others have.
The key issue is it's strategic space, and you occupy the strategic space. And if you leave it, then you lose, if you see what I mean, because someone else. And we didn't need to go away. We had made great progress in rebuilding aspects of Afghan society, but it needed another 10, 15, 20 years. But there are plenty of problems in the world that are 50 years old. You've got the division of Korea, you've got the armistice line in Korea, you've got Cyprus. There are lots of places where we have to stay.
After 20 years, what will remain of the gains, the cultural gains that the U.S. made possible, do you think?
I'm an optimist, and I think quite a lot. I think Afghan society in the urban centers has shifted significantly, and I think there are probably more Afghan initiatives to preserve and develop a different way of life, which may become evident over the next 3, 4, 5 years. I don't think the Taliban are going to have it all their own way.
When you hear the Taliban repeatedly making these promises of, women's inclusion and all of that and no retaliation, but then in the provinces you see people again being summarily executed and, child soldiers being recruited, according to the UN. Does it just make you crazy to hear them constantly?
Yeah, because the Taliban is not a structured organization. It's an organization within which individuals have influence. There are charismatic pockets within the Taliban, and there will be extremists who will be thinking, whatever the leadership is saying in Kabul is rubbish, because that's not how the Taliban is organized. It's not how it runs. And, I think what's a tragedy for Afghanistan is the Taliban do not have the infrastructure to run the state, to provide education, to provide medical facilities, to provide maintenance for transport facilities. I mean, all the things that, this is not what the Taliban do. And, they're a loosely knit, I wouldn't call them a rabble, because they're obviously more formidable than that. And, they're driven by a powerful ideology. But, bear in mind, they could never have succeeded without clandestine Pakistani support.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The ISI are behind this. Does Imran Khan in Pakistan control the ISI? I'm not sure. But,
very interesting.
There is a Pakistani dimension to this, which is a central part of the Taliban's success. So let's not beat about the bush. And, Pakistan is meant to be one of the US's, let's say, allies. Rubbish. This is just terrible what's happened. And, of course, it's partly tribal. It's partly about what's called Greater Pashtunistan. Mm-hmm. So it's about the Pashtun running And the Pashtun are, the majority tribe in southern Afghanistan. And it's about them running Afghanistan.
All right. Great hearing your insights on this. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, Michelle, such a pleasure talking to you.
Always good to have a spy master's perspective on these things, because in every event, every news story, there is what is seen and what is not seen. And we hope to bring you much more on what happens in the shadows of these decisions that then shape our world. Join us, follow us, interact with us here on One Decision.